It usually hits when you least expect it. Maybe it's 3 a.m., you're lying in the quiet, and suddenly your chest tightens. You're pulling in air, but it feels like you're breathing through a straw. A suffocating weight sits right on top of you, and you can't even explain why. This chart illustrates the scale of the modern anxiety epidemic. You can see how a single individual's struggle is mirrored across a staggering 284 million people worldwide. We are carrying the weight of an entire interconnected digital world right in our pockets, and our brains simply weren't built for the load. When you experience chronic stress, the fear center of your brain, the amygdala, actually grows larger and more reactive. At the same time, the prefrontal cortex, which handles rational thought, becomes less active. This is chemistry and biology at work, not a character flaw. For years, a toxic message has circulated in religious spaces, suggesting that anxiety is a faith problem. Telling someone to pray away a panic attack ignores the physical reality of the brain and misrepresents how God actually responds to human pain. We are living in bodies that are biologically overwhelmed and deeply exhausted. Our own nervous systems are redlining, which means we require a structural anchor that doesn't rely on our own strength. Outside of our internal struggles, the environment around us offers very little stability. We navigate a daily barrage of climate anxieties, failing institutions, and constant economic uncertainty. The natural human reflex is to look for security in the things we can touch. We build systems, draft contracts, and make promises to each other, hoping they will hold. But under enough pressure, human guarantees inevitably fracture. In a landscape where every human promise eventually bends or breaks, we have to ask, is there a covenant strong enough to actually hold our weight? To answer that, we look at historical patterns. Thousands of years ago, humanity faced total environmental chaos during the flood. In the aftermath of that destruction, God established a specific type of guarantee. He made a covenant with Noah, promising to never again destroy the earth by flood. He tied that promise to a massive, visible sign, the rainbow. It was a beautiful, unmistakable guarantee hung directly overhead. Noah's covenant provided a global guarantee of physical safety, but the sign remained millions of miles away in the clouds. It gave the world a horizon to look at, yet it left the internal, neurological panic of the individual unaddressed. A promise in the sky cannot reach the storm inside a human mind. For that kind of internal crisis, we look at the prophet Elijah. He wasn't a weak man. He had just successfully confronted hundreds of false prophets in front of an entire nation. But immediately after that triumph, a single death threat from the queen sent him into a tailspin. He ran into the wilderness, completely depleted, collapsed under a tree, and asked God to let him die. Elijah was one of the most powerful figures in history, yet he crashed right after his greatest success. His story stands as a permanent record that exhaustion is not a failure of faith. God's intervention here avoids the grand scale of a sky covenant. There is no earthquake, no fire from heaven, and no lecture about trusting more. Instead, God meets Elijah's physical needs first. He provides food, allows him to sleep, and then approaches him through a still, small whisper. This reveals how God handles our anxiety. He doesn't magically erase the internal storm. Instead, he enters our most depleted, exhausted spaces and simply sits with us in the quiet. Throughout history, external signs, whether rainbows in the sky or laws chiseled onto stone tablets, shared the same flaw. People kept breaking them because the promise lived outside their own bodies. The new covenant shifted the focus from these external symbols to a permanent, internal presence. This moved the promise past the stone and the sky, writing it directly onto the human heart. When Paul begged for relief, God's response, "My grace is sufficient," arrived in the present tense. It is a reality that exists inside the struggle, rather than a reward waiting at the end of it. A lasting covenant doesn't guarantee a life free from panic. What it guarantees is the unbreakable, internal presence of God, standing guard over your mind while the storm is happening. Even with that internal promise secured, we carry immense quiet weights. We carry unspoken grief and enduring memories of people we've lost. Jesus himself wept outside a friend's tomb. Love inherently grieves what is lost. Resilient faith doesn't require pretending the pain has vanished. Daily faith looks like a deliberate resistance against the lie that you are fighting your anxiety alone. You practice that resistance by speaking the fear out loud, which physically breaks the neurological loop inside your head. You speak knowing God is already in the room, not waiting for you to calm down. The chaos of the external world and the constant noise of your own anxiety can be incredibly loud, but the noise can never erase the enduring promise God has permanently inked on your heart.